I watched from my bedroom balcony as my daughter-in-law, Ashley, poured something strange into my glass. At first, I thought it was just another one of her little tricks, something she didn't want me to see. But that night, I knew something was terribly wrong. My name is Joseph Ethan. I'm 71 years old. For over 40 years, I was a cardiac surgeon at the General Hospital, saving countless lives and diagnosing complex cases. But Ashley didn't realize my vast experience. But Ashley still thought she could easily outsmart me. For 6 months, she'd been slowly manipulating me, trying to get away with filing false insurance claims worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. She assumed I was just another frail old man she could easily control. But when I saw her stirring something suspicious into my drink that Tuesday evening in October, I realized what she was really after. So I quietly switched our glasses and waited. If you're watching this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and let me know where you're watching from. Seriously, I love hearing from you, so drop a comment and share your story with me. Because what happened next destroyed her life forever and showed my family that experience and knowledge will always trump deception. But before I tell you what happened, let me explain how I became the perfect target in her eyes. 2 years ago, I lost my wife Margaret to pancreatic cancer. 43 years of marriage, gone in 8 months of brutal treatments that emptied our savings and left me emotionally shattered. The house felt too big, too quiet, filled with memories that made simple tasks like cooking dinner feel overwhelming. My son Thomas suggested I move closer to him and Ashley in their new subdivision outside Hartford, but I refused. This Victorian home on Maple Street held too many memories to abandon. Margaret's garden still bloomed every spring. Her favorite reading chair still caught afternoon sunlight perfectly. Leaving felt like betraying her memory. Then came my heart surgery last March. Triple bypass at 71. The cardiologist, Dr. Patterson, warned me that recovery would be challenging. 6 weeks of limited mobility, strict medication schedules, no driving for 2 months. The kind of vulnerability that terrifies any independent person. Thomas flew in from Boston with Ashley to help during my rehabilitation. I'd always found Ashley somewhat distant, polite but never warm. She'd married Thomas 5 years earlier in a small ceremony I barely remembered. They'd visited for holidays and birthdays, but we'd never developed a close relationship. But after my surgery, Ashley transformed into the devoted daughter-in-law. She arrived every Tuesday and Friday with homemade meals and genuine concern about my recovery. She asked detailed questions about my medications, my doctor appointments, my insurance coverage. She volunteered to organize my pill schedule, handle my medical paperwork, even drive me to follow-up visits when Thomas couldn't take time off work. "Dad's so lucky to have you," Thomas would say, watching Ashley count out my evening pills with pharmaceutical precision. I should have been suspicious of her sudden expertise in medical administration. Ashley had worked as a billing clerk at a small medical practice before marrying Thomas, but she'd never shown interest in healthcare beyond processing paperwork. Now she was discussing drug interactions and cardiac recovery protocols, like a trained nurse. But grief makes you grateful for any kindness, even from someone who'd barely acknowledged your existence before. The first red flag came during a routine cardiology appointment in June. Dr. Patterson frowned at his computer screen, scrolling through insurance records with obvious confusion. "Joseph, your coverage shows several emergency room visits I don't have in my files. 3 times in April alone, plus specialist consultations I never referred." I stared at him. "I haven't been to any emergency room since my surgery," and he turned his monitor toward me. The billing records showed treatments for severe anxiety attacks, chest pain episodes, and medication overdoses. Each visit documented symptoms I'd never experienced, treatments I'd never received. Total charges, $43,200. "There must be some administrative error," I said. But driving home in my decade-old Honda Civic, pieces began clicking together. Ashley's detailed questions about my insurance policy numbers, her insistence on handling all my medical correspondence personally, the way she'd intercept phone calls from billing departments, claiming she'd handle everything so I could focus on recovery. She'd been studying my insurance coverage like a financial roadmap. The second red flag came in August when I decided to review my bank statements more carefully. Automatic payments to medical facilities I'd never visited appeared monthly. Northfield Imaging Center, Valley Sleep Clinic, Regional Pain Management Associates. Each withdrawal between $800 and $3,000, all authorized by someone with access to my account information. When I called Northfield directly, the receptionist cheerfully confirmed my regular appointments. "Oh yes, Mr. Ethan, your daughter Ashley has been wonderful about scheduling your brain imaging sessions. She mentioned your memory issues have been getting worse since your surgery." My memory was fine, but someone was building a medical record suggesting otherwise. I started paying closer attention to Ashley's Tuesday evening routine. She'd arrive at 7:15 with dinner from expensive restaurants I couldn't afford, staying to help with medications until almost 9 o'clock. She'd pour my water, arrange my pills in perfect rows, then chat about Thomas's marketing job while watching me take everything she provided. Always helpful, always concerned, always monitoring to ensure I swallowed every pill completely. The drowsiness that followed I'd attributed to heart medication. The morning confusion I'd blamed on grief and age. The afternoon headaches I'd assumed were normal for a man recovering from major surgery. But cardiac surgeons don't survive 40 years by ignoring patterns that don't match expected outcomes. That Tuesday night in October changed everything. The scope of Ashley's fraud became clear when I drove to Valley Sleep Clinic myself on Wednesday morning, October 4th. "Mr. Ethan," the receptionist beamed with recognition, "you're 30 minutes early for your 10:30 appointment with Dr. Hafen." I didn't have a 10:30 appointment. According to my personal calendar, I was supposed to be home, resting after what Ashley described as a difficult night with heart palpitations. "I'd like to review my complete treatment history," I said, maintaining the confused elderly patient persona Ashley had been building for me. She printed a comprehensive 14-page summary that made my stomach turn with each line item. Sleep study sessions, 22 visits at $850 each. Individual therapy for post-surgical anxiety, 16 sessions at $400. Medication management consultations, 31 visits at $250. Specialized cardiac stress imaging, 7 procedures ranging from $1,200 to $4,000. Total charges submitted to my insurance over 6 months, $625,340. I'd physically attended 0 of these appointments. "Your daughter Ashley manages all the scheduling," the receptionist explained, pulling up digital photos on her computer. "She's been incredibly dedicated to your care. Most adult children don't take such active interest in managing their parents' complex medical needs." And the photos showed Ashley at the reception desk, signing forms and discussing treatment plans with medical staff. She'd been impersonating my healthcare proxy for months, authorizing treatments, scheduling procedures, and coordinating care I never received. Ashley wasn't my daughter. She was my daughter-in-law, with no legal authority to make medical decisions. But she'd been presenting herself as my primary caregiver to multiple healthcare facilities. The billing records revealed a disturbing escalation pattern. Initial claims in April were modest, routine follow-up visits, and standard cardiac monitoring. But by September, Ashley was authorizing expensive imaging procedures, psychiatric evaluations, and specialized consultations that would justify increasingly dramatic medical interventions. She wasn't just stealing insurance money randomly, she was building towards something bigger. I drove to Northfield Imaging Center next, requesting copies of all procedures performed in my name. The technician proudly showed me brain scans supposedly documenting progressive cognitive decline over 4 months. "Your daughter was very concerned about early-stage dementia," he explained. "These images helped rule out structural brain damage, but they do show some age-related changes that could affect memory and judgment." The scans belonged to someone else entirely. The patient identification numbers had been altered, but the original imaging dates predated my heart surgery. Ashley had obtained another elderly patient's medical records and substituted my insurance information to justify billing for expensive neurological testing. This wasn't opportunistic healthcare fraud. This was systematic medical identity theft executed by someone with professional knowledge of billing procedures and insurance protocols. Driving home, I calculated exactly what Ashley stood to gain from my deteriorating health and eventual death. My life insurance policy through the hospital, $400,000, with Thomas listed as primary beneficiary. My house, recently appraised for estate planning, $1,200,000. My retirement savings from 40 years of surgical practice, $780,000 in combined 401k and pension accounts. My monthly Social Security and pension payments, $4,100 that would transfer to surviving family. Total estate value, approximately $2.5 million. But Ashley's plan was more sophisticated than simple inheritance fraud. If I became legally incapacitated due to documented cognitive decline, Thomas would assume power of attorney through documents Ashley had helped me organize last July. Documents I'd signed while heavily medicated, trusting her guidance about protecting my assets from potential nursing home costs. Those power of attorney papers gave Thomas, and by extension Ashley, immediate control over my finances, medical decisions, and estate management. They could authorize expensive medical treatments, justify costly home care services, and access my accounts to pay for necessary interventions. But if I died from complications related to my declining cognitive and cardiac health, Ashley could continue filing insurance claims posthumously while managing my estate through Thomas. She'd already established a comprehensive medical history documenting my deteriorating condition. My death would appear to be the inevitable result of an elderly cardiac patient who couldn't properly manage his complex medication regimen. The most chilling realization, Ashley had legal access to enough prescription medication to make my death appear completely accidental. She'd been gradually increasing my dosages of sleep aids and anxiety medication, building tolerance while documenting my confusion about proper pharmaceutical management. If she miscalculated the final dose, or if my heart couldn't handle the interaction between sedatives and cardiac drugs, she could claim I'd accidentally overdosed while she was trying to manage my deteriorating mental state. My obituary would read, "Beloved cardiac surgeon and father, died peacefully at home after a courageous battle with post-surgical complications and age-related cognitive decline. Thomas would inherit everything within 60 days. Ashley would control Thomas through grief and financial dependency, and within a year they'd have access to nearly $3 million in combined assets, plus ongoing opportunities for insurance fraud using my established medical identity. The elegance of her plan was its medical plausibility. She wasn't poisoning me dramatically. She was weakening me systematically, creating documentation that justified my declining health while positioning herself as the devoted family member, trying desperately to save me from my own confusion and poor judgment. But Tuesday evening, I realized Ashley had made one critical miscalculation. She'd chosen the wrong doctor to deceive. On Thursday morning, Ashley arrived at 7:30 with homemade chicken soup and her usual expression of concerned devotion. "How are you feeling today, Dad? You seemed really disoriented when I called last night to check on you." I hadn't received any phone call from Ashley the previous evening, but maintaining the confused elderly patient persona she'd been constructing was crucial to understanding her complete plan. "Much better this morning, thank you. The soup smells wonderful." She moved efficiently through my kitchen like she owned it, arranging tomorrow's medications in the 7-day pill organizer she'd purchased without my input. I watched her work with new awareness, noting details I'd previously missed. Ashley handled each medication bottle with practiced precision. The legitimate heart pills went into their designated slots normally, but she spent significantly more time with the sleep aids and anxiety medications, using a small metal instrument to carefully adjust something inside the capsules before placing them in the organizer. I spoke with Dr. Patterson's nurse yesterday afternoon, she said, without looking up from her pharmaceutical work. They want to increase your evening medication dosage. Your most recent EKG showed some concerning irregularities that need closer monitoring. I'd seen Dr. Patterson just 2 days earlier for my routine monthly follow up. My EKG results were completely normal, and he'd specifically commented on my improved cardiac function since reducing my medication load. Really? He seemed pleased with my progress during Tuesday's appointment. Ashley paused her pill sorting activities, then smiled with practiced sympathy. Oh, Dad, you didn't have an appointment Tuesday. That was last week. You've been getting confused about dates lately. She was rewriting my recent history to support her narrative of cognitive decline, but I remembered Tuesday's appointment perfectly because Dr. Patterson had shown me my improved test results and reduced my medication schedule. What specific irregularities did his nurse mention? Heart rhythm variations that could indicate developing arrhythmia. Nothing immediately dangerous, but they want to adjust your pharmaceutical regimen to prevent potential complications. Ashley handed me the weekly pill organizer, pointing to the evening section. Make sure you take everything exactly as prescribed. The timing is especially important for managing cardiac rhythm stability. I examined the evening medication carefully. 3 pills I recognized as my legitimate prescriptions. But the evening section also contained 4 additional pills I'd never seen before. Blue, round tablets with pharmaceutical markings that looked familiar from my surgical training days. What are these new blue ones? Magnesium supplements with potassium enhancement. Dr. Patterson wants to support your electrolyte balance while adjusting your cardiac medication. Magnesium supplements are typically white or clear capsules. These blue tablets had the distinctive markings of controlled pharmaceutical substances, not over-the-counter nutritional supplements. After Ashley left, promising to check on me tomorrow evening, I immediately called Dr. Patterson's office to verify any recent medication changes. Dr. Patterson hasn't recommended any dosage adjustments, his nurse confirmed. Your next scheduled appointment is November 15th, and your current medication regimen should continue unchanged until then. I photographed the mysterious blue pills with my phone and drove directly to Connecticut Medical Center to consult my former colleague, Dr. Robert Hayes. Robert had been the chief toxicologist during my final years at the hospital, and if anyone could identify unknown pharmaceutical substances, it was him. Jesus Christ, Joseph. Robert examined the pills under his desktop magnifying lamp with obvious alarm. These are lorazepam tablets, high-dose benzodiazepine medication, 2 milligrams each. Lorazepam is prescribed for severe anxiety disorders and panic attacks. In combination with my cardiac medications, the dosage Ashley had prepared could cause dangerous drops in blood pressure and potentially fatal heart rhythm disruptions. With your current pharmaceutical regimen and cardiac history, this dosage could trigger serious cardiovascular events, Robert continued, his voice carrying the weight of 30 years in emergency toxicology. Who prescribed these? Someone who wants me to have cardiovascular events. Robert's expression shifted from medical concern to personal alarm. Joseph, you need to contact law enforcement immediately. This isn't accidental medication confusion. Not yet. I need to understand the complete scope of what she's planning. But Robert's analysis confirmed my worst suspicions. Ashley wasn't gradually weakening me for long-term fraud. She was preparing for a definitive conclusion to her scheme. That evening, Ashley arrived earlier than her usual schedule, 6:15 instead of 7:30, carrying takeout from an expensive Italian restaurant I couldn't afford on my retirement income. She seemed unusually nervous, checking her smartphone repeatedly and glancing toward my front windows as if expecting someone. Thomas might visit this weekend, she mentioned while transferring pasta from plastic containers to my good china. He's been increasingly worried about your cognitive state lately. What specifically has he heard about my condition? Nothing alarming, just that you've seemed more confused recently about appointments, medications, daily routines, normal concerns for someone your age recovering from major surgery. I hadn't been confused about anything. My cognitive function had actually improved dramatically since I'd started secretly avoiding the medications Ashley provided. Maybe I should call him tonight to reassure him. Oh, don't interrupt his work schedule. He's under tremendous pressure about potential layoffs at his marketing firm. The last thing he needs is additional family stress. Ashley had never previously expressed concern about Thomas's employment situation. She was deliberately keeping us from communicating directly about my health status. I watched her prepare my evening water glass, adding something white and powdery that dissolved quickly when stirred. The substance wasn't the normal pill-crushing technique she used for my legitimate medications. This powder was finer, more pharmaceutical in appearance. What's that you're adding tonight? Vitamin C powder with electrolyte enhancement. Your immune system needs additional support during medication adjustments. She handed me the glass and settled into Margaret's old chair to observe my evening routine. Her attention was focused, clinical, like a researcher monitoring a critical experiment. Actually, could I have some of that red wine Thomas brought last week? Just half a glass to help me sleep. Ashley's expression flickered with irritation. Wine isn't recommended with your current medication combination. Just tonight, to celebrate feeling stronger. Dad, you really shouldn't mix alcohol with cardiac drugs. I'm celebrating 2 years of surviving without Margaret. One small glass won't interfere with my recovery. Mentioning Margaret's death created emotional pressure Ashley couldn't argue against without appearing heartless. She reluctantly retrieved the bottle Thomas had left during his previous visit. Fine, but only a few sips. Ashley poured wine into 2 glasses, placing mine next to the water she'd already prepared. This gave me the opportunity I'd been planning since Tuesday night. While Ashley returned the wine bottle to my refrigerator, I quietly switched our glasses. The water containing her unknown pharmaceutical additive moved to her side of the table. My clean water glass took its place at my setting. Here's to family, I said, raising my switched glass. Ashley lifted hers without hesitation, to taking care of each other. We both drank, and I waited to see what Ashley had been giving me for months. Within 30 minutes of drinking the switched water, Ashley's behavior began changing in subtle but unmistakable ways. Her speech became slightly slower, more deliberate. She touched her temples twice, complaining of a mild headache. Most tellingly, she kept blinking heavily, as if struggling to maintain focus during our conversation about Thomas's work and my recovery progress. I feel a little lightheaded, she admitted around 8:15. Maybe I should head home early tonight. Are you safe to drive? You seem tired. I'm fine, just a long day at work. But Ashley wasn't fine. Whatever pharmaceutical cocktail she'd been putting in my drinks was now affecting her instead, and the symptoms were clearly unfamiliar to her. Maybe you should call Thomas to pick you up. No, I don't want to worry him unnecessarily. Ashley gathered her purse and jacket, moving more carefully than usual. At my front door, she turned back with an expression that might have been genuine concern or calculated performance. Remember to take all your evening pills exactly as organized, and call me immediately if you feel confused or dizzy tonight. After she left, I watched from my bedroom window as Ashley sat in her BMW for almost 10 minutes before starting the engine. She was experiencing the effects of her own pharmaceutical manipulation, and it was clearly stronger than she'd anticipated. The next morning, I called FBI agent Sarah Mitchell. Sarah and I had worked together on the Hartford Medical Center fraud case in 2008 and 2009, a massive Medicare scam involving fake cancer treatments for elderly patients, false billing for chemotherapy that was never administered, and systematic exploitation of terminal diagnoses to maximize insurance payouts. I'd provided expert medical testimony that helped distinguish between legitimate treatments and impossible procedures. My analysis of billing records, combined with my knowledge of actual cancer care protocols, had identified patterns that led to 12 convictions and $14 million in recovered funds. Dr. Ethan? Sarah's voice carried surprise and warmth. It's been what, 15 years? 16, since the Hartford convictions. I heard about your heart surgery through the hospital grapevine. How's your recovery going? Complicated. I need your expertise again, Sarah. Different case, but similar pattern. I explained Ashley's systematic fraud over 45 minutes, providing dates, dollar amounts, and evidence I'd already gathered. Sarah listened with the focused attention I remembered from our previous collaboration. Medicare fraud combined with systematic poisoning, she summarized. This isn't just financial crime, Joseph. This is attempted murder disguised as healthcare management. I know, and I have physical evidence. The next morning, Sarah drove up from the FBI's New Haven field office in an unmarked sedan. She looked older, grayer, but her investigative instincts remained sharp as surgical instruments. Show me everything, she said, settling at my kitchen table with a digital recorder and evidence collection kit. I presented the fraudulent medical records chronologically, starting with the fake emergency room visits and progressing through the specialized treatments I'd never received. Sarah photographed each document, noting discrepancies between claimed services and my actual medical history. She's not just filing random false claims, Sarah observed. This shows sophisticated knowledge of Medicare billing codes and insurance verification procedures. I showed her the pill bottles Ashley had been using, the mysterious blue tablets, and the water sample I'd collected from Tuesday night's switched glasses. We'll need comprehensive toxicology analysis, Sarah said, carefully bagging the evidence. But based on what you're describing, she's been gradually increasing dosages to build tolerance before administering a lethal combination. As Sarah explained the FBI's approach to medical fraud investigations involving elderly victims, they'd begin by verifying every healthcare facility where false claims had been submitted in my name. Simultaneously, they'd trace the financial flow to determine where insurance payments were being deposited. How long will the investigation take? Normally 6 to 8 weeks for the financial analysis, but the attempted murder component changes everything. We can't wait for her to try again. Sarah outlined an accelerated timeline. Within 5 days, FBI agents would have verified the scope of Ashley's billing fraud. Within 2 weeks, they'd have complete toxicology results and financial tracking data. Most importantly, we'll install surveillance equipment to record any future attempts to drug you. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. I would continue my regular routine while FBI technicians monitored Ashley's Tuesday and Friday visits. Hidden cameras would record her pharmaceutical manipulations. Digital recording devices would capture any incriminating conversations. She thinks you're a helpless, isolated elderly man, Sarah said. We're going to let her keep believing that until she provides enough evidence to guarantee conviction. That afternoon, Dr. Robert Hayes called with comprehensive analysis of Tuesday night's water sample. Joseph, this is extremely serious. Lorazepam, diphenhydramine, and zolpidem. That's anxiety medication, antihistamine sleep aids, and powerful hypnotic drugs combined. What would that dosage do to someone my age? With your cardiac condition, 30 to 45 minutes to complete cardiovascular collapse, and it would appear completely consistent with accidental medication overdose by an elderly patient with documented cognitive confusion. Robert's voice carried the gravity of someone who'd analyzed hundreds of suspicious deaths during his toxicology career. She wasn't trying to make you sick, Joseph. Tuesday night was supposed to be your last night alive. The implications were staggering. Ashley had been building toward my murder for months, creating medical justification and establishing patterns that would make my death appear like tragic but predictable complications from age and cardiac surgery. But her plan had one fundamental flaw. She'd underestimated exactly who she was trying to kill. Friday evening brought the confrontation I'd been preparing for since Wednesday's FBI meeting. Ashley arrived with Thomas at 6:30, both carrying grocery bags and wearing expressions of concerned family solidarity. "Dad!" Thomas hugged me with unusual intensity. Ashley thought we should spend the evening together. She's been worried about some episodes of confusion you've been having. Episodes of confusion I'd never experienced, but which Ashley had been documenting as part of her systematic character assassination. I'm feeling much clearer lately. Come in, both of you. We settled in my living room where Ashley had positioned herself strategically to observe both Thomas and me during what was clearly a planned intervention. Dad, Ashley's been sharing some concerning observations about your memory and medication management, Thomas began with obvious discomfort. Missing appointments, confusion about prescriptions, difficulty managing daily routines. What specific incidents has she described? Thomas glanced at Ashley, who nodded encouragingly. Last Tuesday, you apparently forgot about a cardiology appointment and seemed disoriented when Ashley called to remind you. I didn't have a cardiology appointment last Tuesday. My next appointment with Dr. Patterson is November 15th. Ashley's expression remained sympathetic but determined. Dad, we discussed this Wednesday night. You were confused about the dates. I wasn't confused about anything, and you didn't call me Wednesday night. Thomas looked increasingly uncomfortable with the conflicting accounts. Dad, maybe we should just focus on making sure you're getting proper support. What kind of support? Ashley leaned forward with practiced compassion. Just someone to help manage your daily routine, medication schedules, doctor appointments, household maintenance. Nothing dramatic or restrictive. You mean a full-time caregiver? A live-in companion, Ashley corrected smoothly. Someone who could stay here and make sure you're safe, especially during medication transitions. Thomas nodded reluctantly. The house is enormous, Dad. After major heart surgery, we're worried about you managing everything independently. I studied my son's earnest expression. He genuinely believed Ashley's fabricated concerns about my cognitive decline and inability to live safely alone. She'd been systematically undermining his confidence in my mental capacity for months. Has Ashley shown you documentation of these memory problems? Some medical records, Thomas admitted. Emergency room visits that were concerning. Multiple trips in short periods. I haven't visited any emergency room since my surgery 6 months ago. Ashley maintained her concerned expression while subtly increasing pressure. Dad, you were very confused during those episodes. I drove you to Northfield General myself when you were experiencing chest pains and disorientation. What specific dates did these emergency visits occur? Ashley's slight hesitation revealed she wasn't prepared for detailed questioning. April 15th, April 22nd, and April 28th. I retrieved Margaret's desk calendar, where I maintained detailed daily records, as I had throughout my surgical career. April 15th was Margaret's birthday. I spent 6 hours at Riverside Cemetery placing fresh flowers on her grave, then had dinner with Bill and Carol Williamson next door. They can verify I was home by 7 p.m. Thomas examined the calendar entry, written in my careful handwriting with specific times and details. April 22nd was your birthday, Thomas. You called me at 7:15 p.m. from Boston to thank me for the vintage watch I'd shipped for your 38th birthday. We talked for 43 minutes about your marketing presentation. Ashley's composure began showing hairline cracks. April 28th was Easter Sunday. I attended 8 a.m. service at St. Matthew's Episcopal, then lunch with Father Mackenzie to discuss Margaret's Memorial Garden Fund. I was home by 3 p.m. to call my brother Paul in San Diego. Thomas studied each calendar entry with growing confusion. Dad, these are very detailed records. I've maintained daily logs for 45 years, professional habit from surgical practice. Ashley's strategy shifted toward questioning my mental reliability. Memory can be very tricky after major cardiac surgery, especially with complex medication regimens. Sometimes patients create false memories to fill gaps in their actual recall. Are you suggesting I'm fabricating these records? I'm suggesting your medication might be affecting your ability to distinguish between actual events and imagined experiences. What medication specifically? The sleep aids and anxiety drugs Dr. Patterson prescribed for your post-surgical recovery. I looked directly at Thomas. Call Dr. Patterson right now. Ask him specifically what psychiatric medications he's prescribed for me. Dad, it's Friday evening. His emergency answering service. Tell him this is Joseph Ethan with an urgent medication verification question. Thomas reluctantly dialed, clearly hoping to avoid family conflict. Dr. Patterson's covering physician returned the call within 10 minutes. Dr. Patterson, this is Thomas Ethan, Joseph Ethan's son. We have an urgent question about his current anxiety and sleep medications. Pause. He's not prescribed any anxiety medications? No sleep aids either? Just cardiac drugs and blood pressure management? Thomas's expression shifted from concern to alarm. You're certain? Nothing for post-surgical anxiety or insomnia? Longer pause. Thank you, doctor. He disconnected and stared at Ashley with dawning suspicion. Dr. Patterson says Dad has never been prescribed psychiatric medications. His current regimen is limited to heart medication, blood pressure pills, and low-dose aspirin. The living room fell silent, except for the antique grandfather clock ticking in the corner. Ashley's carefully constructed narrative was collapsing under factual scrutiny. There must be some confusion in his records, Ashley said, her voice slightly less controlled. Maybe the prescriptions came from a different specialist. Dr. Patterson has been his only cardiologist since the surgery, Thomas interrupted, and he would coordinate any additional medications with other physicians. Ashley's eyes darted between us, calculating rapidly. Maybe I misunderstood the prescription labels. Show us the medication bottles, I said calmly. What? The pill bottles you've been using to organize my weekly medications. They're in my kitchen cabinet. We moved to the kitchen, where Ashley's organizational system was prominently displayed. I opened the cabinet containing my legitimate prescription bottles. These are my actual medications, prescribed by Dr. Patterson and filled at Riverside Pharmacy. Thomas examined each bottle carefully. White and blue pills for heart rhythm, small yellow tablets for blood pressure, low-dose aspirin for cardiac protection. I opened Ashley's weekly pill organizer, revealing the evening section she'd prepared for tonight. Compare my actual prescriptions with what Ashley has been giving me. The difference was unmistakable. My legitimate medications were white, blue, and yellow. Ashley's evening section contained green, round blue, and large white pills I'd never seen before. Ashley, Thomas's voice carried controlled anger. Where did these other pills come from? There might have been a mix-up at the pharmacy. Which pharmacy? Dad uses Riverside exclusively, and these pills aren't from his prescription bottles. Ashley couldn't answer because there was no legitimate source for the unknown medications. Thomas's phone rang again. The caller ID showed Dr. Patterson's emergency line. Put it on speakerphone, I requested. Thomas, I wanted to follow up about your father's medication question because I'm reviewing his complete file now. Joseph hasn't been prescribed anxiety medications, sleep aids, or any psychiatric drugs since his surgery. His recovery has been excellent, and his current pharmaceutical regimen is working perfectly. Dr. Patterson's voice carried professional concern. If he's been taking unauthorized medications, we need to know immediately. Some drugs can interact dangerously with cardiac prescriptions, potentially triggering arrhythmia or cardiovascular events. Thomas held up the mysterious pills. Dr. Patterson, what would happen if someone with Dad's condition took high-dose anxiety medication without medical supervision? Depends on the specific drugs and dosage amounts. Mild interaction might cause drowsiness and confusion. Higher doses could trigger dangerous drops in blood pressure, heart rhythm irregularities, or complete cardiovascular collapse. Why are you asking this? Thomas looked at Ashley with dawning horror. We'll call you back, Dr. Patterson. After disconnecting, the kitchen remained silent for nearly 2 minutes while the implications settled. Finally, Thomas spoke with careful control. Ashley, I need you to explain exactly what's been happening here. Ashley's mask of concerned caregiving finally slipped completely. Her expression shifted from sympathy to defensive anger. Your father is sick and confused, whether he admits it or not. He needs constant medical supervision because you're never available to provide proper family support. By giving him unauthorized medication? By making sure he receives appropriate treatment for his obvious cognitive decline. What treatment? From which doctors? At which medical facilities? Ashley couldn't answer because there were no legitimate doctors, no authorized treatments, no medical facilities providing actual care, only systematic fraud and attempted murder disguised as devoted family caregiving. Thomas sat down heavily at my kitchen table. Dad, how long has this been happening? 6 months that I can prove with documentation, possibly longer. Why didn't you tell me immediately? Because you believed Ashley was helping me, and because I needed to understand the complete scope of her criminal activity before involving law enforcement. Thomas stared at his wife of 5 years. The complete scope of what? I looked at my son, knowing this conversation would permanently change our family dynamics. Ashley has been filing fraudulent insurance claims in my name for over 6 months, while systematically poisoning me to create believable medical emergencies and justify my eventual death. Ashley's desperate situation made her extremely dangerous. "You can't prove any of these accusations," she said, backing toward my kitchen door with growing panic. "It's the confused testimony of an elderly cardiac patient against someone who's been trying to provide proper medical care." Thomas blocked her path to the exit. "Ashley, stop. Just explain what's been happening." "What's happening is your father needs professional supervision, and you've been too busy with your career to notice his obvious decline. I've been trying to manage an impossible situation." "By forging medical records?" I asked calmly. Ashley's composure cracked further. "I haven't forged anything. If there are billing errors, those are administrative mistakes by medical facilities." $625,000 in billing errors? The specific dollar amount stopped Ashley cold. Until this moment, she'd assumed I was confused about minor details, not comprehensively informed about the complete scope of her fraud. "How do you know that number?" she whispered. "Because I've been investigating your criminal activities since August, along with the FBI." All color drained from Ashley's face. Thomas stared at me in shock. "Dad, you called the FBI?" "Agent Sarah Mitchell from the New Haven field office has been building a federal case against Ashley since Wednesday. Medicare fraud, insurance fraud, identity theft, elder abuse, and attempted murder." Ashley slumped against my kitchen counter as the reality of her situation became clear. "You see, Ashley, you made one critical miscalculation. You assumed you were exploiting a helpless, isolated elderly man with no resources or professional connections. You never researched your victim's background." Thomas looked between us with growing confusion. "What background?" I walked to Margaret's desk and retrieved a folder I'd prepared for this moment. Inside were medical journal articles, professional certifications, and newspaper clippings spanning 40 years. "I'm Dr. Joseph Ethan, former chief of cardiac surgery at Connecticut General Hospital. I developed minimally invasive cardiac procedures that are still used nationally. I've published 63 articles in medical journals, and I've provided expert testimony in federal medical fraud cases for 15 years. I handed Thomas a newspaper clipping from 2009. "The Hartford Medical Center case. Medicare fraud involving fake cancer treatments for elderly patients. I helped the FBI identify billing patterns that led to 12 convictions and $14 million in recovered funds." Thomas read the article with obvious amazement. "Dad, I never knew you worked with law enforcement." "Medical expertise is crucial for prosecuting healthcare fraud. Juries need doctors to explain which procedures are medically impossible, which drug combinations are lethal, and which billing patterns indicate systematic criminal activity." Ashley was shaking now, understanding that she'd targeted someone with exactly the professional knowledge and federal connections needed to destroy her completely. "Agent Mitchell and I worked together on 3 major fraud investigations. When I called her Wednesday morning, she prioritized this case immediately." I pulled out my phone and dialed a number Ashley had never heard before. "Sarah, we're ready for the arrest." Through my front windows, unmarked FBI vehicles were already positioning themselves in my driveway. Agents in tactical gear emerged with practiced efficiency, surrounding my house within 60 seconds. Ashley stared in horror as her worst nightmare materialized. "This isn't happening." "Oh, it's absolutely happening. You've been under federal surveillance for 3 days. Every conversation recorded. Every pill you've given me analyzed by FBI toxicology labs. Every fraudulent insurance claim traced through federal banking systems." The doorbell rang with official authority. I answered it calmly. "Dr. Ethan." Agent Mitchell stepped inside with 2 senior colleagues. "Agent Sarah Mitchell, FBI Financial Crimes Task Force. We have federal warrants for Ashley Brennan Ethan's immediate arrest." She displayed the official paperwork to Thomas and me. "Ashley Brennan Ethan, you're under arrest for Medicare fraud, insurance identity theft, elder abuse, and attempted murder in the 1st degree under federal jurisdiction." "Attempted murder?" Thomas stepped backward in shock. Agent Mitchell nodded grimly. "Tuesday night's toxicology analysis confirmed lethal dosages of benzodiazepine medications mixed with cardiac drug interactions. This wasn't healthcare fraud, Thomas. Your wife was planning to murder your father for inheritance money." Ashley finally broke completely. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way. I just needed financial security. Thomas might lose his marketing job. We have massive mortgage payments. I thought if Joseph gradually got sicker, insurance would cover everything and eventually. Eventually what? Agent Mitchell pressed. I never specifically planned for anyone to die. I was just managing his medical care to maximize insurance benefits. By filing false claims totaling $625,000, Ashley couldn't deny the financial evidence. Agent Mitchell continued her methodical presentation. We've identified every medical facility where fraudulent claims were filed using Dr. Ethan's insurance information. Bank records show insurance payments deposited directly into accounts you established using forged power of attorney documents. Thomas sat down heavily. $625,000? Plus systematic attempted murder through pharmaceutical manipulation, Agent Mitchell added. Toxicology reports confirm Dr. Ethan has been ingesting dangerous drug combinations for 6 months. Someone was gradually building toward a lethal final dose while establishing medical documentation to justify his death. She turned to Ashley with professional satisfaction. Did you really think this would work, Dr. H? Ethan built Connecticut General's cardiac surgery program over 4 decades. He has colleagues at every major medical facility in 3 states. The moment he started investigating, this prosecution became inevitable. Ashley was sobbing now. I didn't know he was a prominent physician. He never mentioned his professional background. Because he was gathering evidence, Agent Mitchell explained. Dr. Ethan has been working with federal investigators since Wednesday morning. Hidden surveillance equipment recorded you tampering with his medications Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Recorded conversations captured you lying to Thomas about his father's medical condition. She handcuffed Ashley with practiced efficiency. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in federal court. As Agent Mitchell read Ashley her constitutional rights, I felt a complex mixture of satisfaction and profound sadness. Justice was being served, but my family relationships would never recover from this systematic betrayal of trust. Thomas looked completely devastated. Dad, why didn't you warn me what was happening? Because you loved Ashley and trusted her completely. I needed absolutely irrefutable federal evidence before asking you to choose between your wife and your father. There was never any choice. She was planning to murder you. Agent Mitchell finished processing Ashley's arrest and addressed Thomas directly. Your wife filed fraudulent insurance claims for treatments your father never received, forged his signature on power of attorney documents, and administered potentially lethal drug combinations disguised as legitimate medical care. Thomas watched his wife of 5 years being led away in federal custody. How long have you suspected? Since June, when Dr. Patterson showed me billing records for emergency room visits I'd never made. But I needed comprehensive evidence to ensure conviction on federal charges. Agent Mitchell closed her evidence folder. Based on the financial fraud scope and attempted murder charges, Ms. Brennan Ethan is looking at 20 to 25 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. Ashley was placed in the FBI vehicle while neighbors observed from their windows. The woman they'd known as the devoted daughter-in-law was being arrested for systematically attempting to murder the elderly man she'd pretended to care for. Thomas and I stood in my driveway as the federal law enforcement convoy departed. What happens to us now? He asked quietly. Now we rebuild our relationship based on complete honesty instead of assumption and manipulation. But the most difficult conversations were still ahead of us. The federal courthouse in Hartford buzzed with intense media activity on Monday morning, November 7th. Ashley's arraignment had attracted national attention after FBI sources leaked details about the sophisticated medical fraud scheme targeting an elderly cardiac surgeon. Thomas and I occupied the front row as Ashley was led into the courtroom wearing standard Orange County jail clothing. She appeared significantly smaller, more fragile, completely different from the confident woman who'd been managing my medical care just 4 days earlier. Federal Judge Catherine Reynolds reviewed the charges with obvious gravity. Medicare fraud in the amount of $625,340, insurance identity theft across multiple jurisdictions, elder abuse with systematic endangerment, attempted murder in the first degree under federal statute. How does the defendant plead? Ashley's court-appointed public defender whispered urgent instructions in her ear for nearly 2 minutes. Not guilty to all charges, Your Honor. I wasn't surprised by the plea strategy. Ashley's only remaining hope was claiming she'd been confused about medical billing procedures and medication management, not deliberately committing federal crimes and attempted murder. Federal prosecutor Diana Walsh rose to present the government's evidence. Your Honor, the defendant systematically defrauded Medicare and private insurance companies over 8 months while attempting to murder her elderly father-in-law through calculated pharmaceutical poisoning. This represents one of the most premeditated examples of elder abuse and medical fraud our office has prosecuted in federal court. She methodically presented evidence with prosecutorial precision. Bank records documenting insurance payments deposited into Ashley's secretly established accounts. Pharmacy records proving she'd obtained controlled substances using forged medical authorizations. Hidden surveillance footage showing Ashley tampering with my prescribed medications while adding unauthorized pharmaceutical substances. The defendant wasn't confused about legitimate medical procedures, Prosecutor Walsh continued. She previously worked as a medical billing specialist and understood exactly how insurance verification systems operate. She selected this victim specifically because she believed Dr. Joseph Ethan was isolated, medically vulnerable, and unlikely to detect sophisticated healthcare fraud. Judge Reynolds studied the evidence presentations with increasing alarm. This appears to be systematic criminal enterprise disguised as family caregiving. Exactly, Your Honor. The defendant gradually increased dangerous drug dosages over 6 months, while creating false medical documentation to justify the victim's deteriorating health condition. Tuesday night's attempted poisoning wasn't impulsive. It represented the planned culmination of months of careful preparation for murder. Ashley's public defender attempted to minimize the federal charges. Your Honor, my client experienced severe financial stress when her husband faced potential unemployment. She made regrettable decisions while attempting to manage her father-in-law's legitimately complex medical requirements following major cardiac surgery. By systematically forging medical records, Judge Reynolds interrupted sharply, by misunderstanding intricate insurance billing procedures during a family medical crisis, and the attempted murder charges involving lethal pharmaceutical combinations, Ashley's defender had no credible response to the toxicology evidence demonstrating systematic poisoning with potentially fatal drug interactions. Judge Reynolds examined additional evidence files before addressing bail considerations. The defendant demonstrates sophisticated criminal planning executed over extended periods with calculated precision. She poses both significant flight risk and ongoing public safety threats. Bail was set at $750,000 cash, effectively guaranteeing Ashley would remain in federal custody at Hartford Correctional Center until trial proceedings concluded. After the arraignment, Prosecutor Walsh explained the likely judicial outcomes to Thomas and me. Federal medical fraud at this financial magnitude typically carries 15 to 20 years minimum sentence. Combined with attempted murder charges involving systematic poisoning, Ashley faces 25 to 30 years without parole eligibility. Thomas appeared emotionally shattered by the legal reality. 30 years? She attempted to murder your father while stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from federal healthcare programs, Prosecutor Walsh explained bluntly. If she'd succeeded, Ashley would have continued filing fraudulent insurance claims while managing your inheritance through forged legal documents. This was sophisticated, organized crime disguised as devoted family caregiving. Walking out of the federal courthouse, reporters shouted questions about the case's unusual circumstances. Dr. Ethan, how did you first realize what was happening? 40 years of medical practice taught me to recognize patterns that don't match expected clinical outcomes. What advice do you have for other elderly Americans? Trust your professional instincts. If something feels medically wrong, investigate thoroughly. Don't assume family members automatically have your best interests as their primary motivation. Will you ever forgive your daughter-in-law? I paused to consider the question carefully. Forgiveness is a personal spiritual process. Legal justice is a public societal requirement. Today was about ensuring justice for systematic criminal activity. The FBI investigation subsequently revealed additional victims across Ashley's employment history. She'd been practicing medical billing fraud at her previous position with Regional Healthcare Associates, targeting elderly patients who had comprehensive insurance coverage but limited family oversight of their medical care. Ashley had stolen an estimated $67,000 from her former employer before being terminated for administrative irregularities that weren't reported to law enforcement at the time. The criminal pattern was unmistakable. Ashley deliberately sought employment positions and romantic relationships that provided access to elderly individuals with valuable insurance policies and significant inheritance potential. I wasn't her first victim, just the first victim with sufficient medical expertise and federal law enforcement connections to fight back effectively. Agent Mitchell called that evening with additional investigative updates. We've identified 4 other elderly men Ashley befriended or dated over the past 3 years. Similar patterns of unexplained medical billing, systematic insurance fraud, and gradual health deterioration without clear medical explanation. Are they pursuing federal charges? 3 are cooperating fully with our investigation. The 4th victim died 14 months ago from what appeared to be accidental medication complications, but we're reopening that case for potential murder charges. Another death. Another family destroyed by Ashley's systematic exploitation of elderly medical vulnerability and social isolation. The positive outcome is your case provides crucial evidence for prosecuting the other fraud victims. Ashley's facing charges in multiple federal jurisdictions now. Thomas struggled with overwhelming guilt about failing to protect me from his wife's criminal activities. I should have recognized the warning signs. Ashley was extremely skilled at manipulation. She exploited your genuine love for me and your natural desire to provide family support. That represents psychological manipulation, not personal failure on your part. But I believed her claims about your cognitive confusion, because you wanted to trust your wife's concern for family welfare. That's normal human psychology, Thomas, not a character defect. The most challenging aspect was explaining everything to our extended family members who'd been completely unaware of Ashley's systematic deception. 4 months after Ashley's arrest, she accepted a comprehensive plea agreement to avoid federal trial. Her defense attorney had finally convinced her that challenging the FBI's overwhelming evidence was professionally suicidal. Surveillance recordings, detailed toxicology reports, complete financial documentation, and expert medical testimony created an absolutely unbeatable prosecution case. The plea hearing took place on a gray March morning with minimal media attention. Ashley appeared significantly thinner and older, visibly broken by months in federal detention awaiting trial proceedings. Judge Catherine Reynolds showed no sympathy during the formal sentencing phase. The defendant systematically exploited the medical vulnerability and family trust of an elderly cardiac surgery patient while stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from federal healthcare programs. She attempted to commit premeditated murder while maintaining a facade of devoted family caregiving. This represents an unconscionable violation of both familial bonds and fundamental societal trust in healthcare systems. 24 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. Ashley would be 58 years old upon release, assuming she survived the complete sentence. Thomas attended the sentencing hearing but maintained complete silence regarding Ashley. Their marriage had been legally annulled within 60 days of her arrest, after Thomas discovered she'd also been systematically stealing from their joint financial accounts and credit cards throughout their relationship. I feel like I never actually knew who she really was, he confided to me afterward. Everything about our marriage was apparently calculated deception. The financial recovery process proved surprisingly complex. Ashley had spent approximately $430,000 of the stolen insurance money on luxury purchases, gambling debts, and cash payments that couldn't be traced through normal banking systems. Federal investigators recovered roughly $190,000 from Ashley's various accounts, which was returned proportionally to Medicare and the private insurance companies she had defrauded. The remainder was classified as permanent criminal loss. My actual legitimate medical expenses since heart surgery totaled less than $14,000 for authentic cardiac follow-up care and prescription medications. Everything else Ashley had billed represented complete fabrication. The psychological aftermath was more challenging than the financial recovery. My house felt fundamentally different now, lighter, safer, but also somehow violated by months of systematic deception and attempted murder disguised as loving family care. Dr. Patterson monitored my cardiac recovery with additional attention to medication interactions. Your heart function and general health have actually improved dramatically since November, he reported during a January follow-up appointment. Whatever was interfering with your recovery has been completely eliminated. That interference had been Ashley's systematic poisoning program designed to create believable medical justification for my eventual death. Thomas relocated back to Boston permanently, but began visiting every other weekend to rebuild our family relationship on foundations of complete transparency and mutual respect. I keep analyzing our conversations, looking for warning signs I should have recognized, he said during one February visit. Ashley was a sophisticated criminal with professional medical billing experience. She understood exactly how to manipulate family emotions and medical systems simultaneously. Our family communication patterns changed fundamentally after Ashley's exposure. Thomas became more protective and involved in my healthcare decisions, asking detailed questions about every medical appointment and prescription change. I became more open about sharing medical information, ensuring Thomas had complete access to my treatment plans and medication schedules. We'd both learned that family trust requires active verification and ongoing communication, not passive assumption and blind faith in appearances. The media attention brought unexpected connections from other elderly Americans dealing with similar systematic abuse by trusted family members or caregivers. Letters arrived weekly from people sharing stories of financial exploitation, medical manipulation, and social isolation imposed by relatives who appeared helpful while secretly destroying their victims' lives. You demonstrated that age and medical vulnerability don't automatically mean helplessness, one woman wrote from Oregon. My daughter-in-law was controlling my Social Security payments until I started fighting back, using your example. I began volunteering regularly with the FBI's Elder Fraud Task Force, helping educate senior citizens about recognizing and preventing systematic financial and medical abuse by trusted family members. The educational work was emotionally rewarding but consistently sobering. Elder abuse affects over 5 million Americans annually, with family members responsible for approximately 60% of financial exploitation cases targeting elderly victims. Ashley's case became a standard training example for federal law enforcement agencies nationwide. The systematic nature of her medical fraud, the sophistication of her pharmaceutical manipulation techniques, and the long-term planning involved made it a textbook illustration of organized elder abuse disguised as family caregiving. Agent Mitchell regularly used our investigation in FBI training seminars for new agents. This case succeeded because the victim had professional medical knowledge and established relationships with federal law enforcement. But most elderly abuse victims lack those specific advantages. The fundamental lesson concerned vulnerability recognition and proactive protection strategies. Advanced age doesn't automatically create helplessness, but it does require different types of vigilance and safeguards against exploitation. I installed comprehensive security systems throughout my house, including cameras that record all visitor interactions. I arranged monthly financial reviews with my certified accountant to monitor for any unusual banking or insurance activity. I established emergency contact protocols with Dr. Patterson, Agent Mitchell, and Thomas for reporting suspicious medical or financial situations immediately. Most importantly, I learned to trust my professional instincts about suspicious behavior patterns, regardless of the apparent family relationship or claimed good intentions of the person involved. The hardest lesson is accepting that people who claim to love you might simultaneously be planning to destroy you, I explained to a support group for elder abuse survivors. But recognizing that psychological possibility is essential for protecting yourself effectively. Thomas and I maintained our new Sunday dinner tradition whenever he visited from Boston. Today marks exactly 18 months since Ashley's arrest and federal conviction. Thomas and I were having our usual Sunday coffee in my kitchen when he asked the question I'd been expecting for months. Dad, do you think you'll ever be able to trust anyone to help you with medical care again? I looked around the same kitchen where Ashley had spent months systematically poisoning me while pretending to provide loving family support. The identical counter where she'd dissolved dangerous pharmaceutical substances into my evening water. The same table where she'd organized lethal drug combinations while discussing Thomas's career and my cardiac recovery. Trust isn't about blind faith and good intentions, Thomas. It's about verification, transparency, and maintaining appropriate boundaries. Through 18 months of reflection and counseling, I'd learned to distinguish between legitimate medical assistance and manipulative control designed to create dependency and vulnerability. Authentic caregivers respect your autonomy and encourage continued independence. They welcome questions about medications, procedures, and treatment plans. They include you in medical decision making and support direct communication with healthcare providers. Manipulators operate differently. They discourage direct contact with medical professionals, claiming you're too confused or too sick to understand complex medical information. They insist on managing all healthcare communication themselves, creating artificial urgency around medical decisions that require immediate action without consultation or verification. The critical difference is transparency versus secrecy, I explained to Thomas. Ashley always had elaborate explanations for why I couldn't talk to doctors directly, why I shouldn't worry about billing details, why I needed to trust her management completely without question. Thomas nodded with understanding. She was systematically isolating you from information about your own health. Exactly. And she created artificial medical emergencies that required immediate response, preventing me from researching or verifying her claims independently. These warning signs had become central elements of the elder abuse prevention education I now provided through the FBI's community outreach programs. My current routine includes multiple safeguards that Ashley's systematic fraud couldn't have overcome. Monthly appointments with Dr. Patterson to review every medication change and insurance claim. Quarterly meetings with my estate attorney to monitor any attempted modifications to legal documents. Weekly consultations with a financial advisor who tracks all medical billing and insurance activity. Most importantly, I maintain direct personal relationships with every medical provider, pharmacist, and healthcare service without intermediary management by family members or caregivers. But what about when you genuinely need help with complex medical situations? Thomas asked. Legitimate assistance enhances independence rather than creating dependency. It provides support for tasks I can't manage alone while maintaining my control over all important decisions. The distinction was profound and life-saving. Ashley had gradually assumed complete control over my healthcare management, claiming I was too medically fragile and cognitively impaired to handle routine medical communication myself. Real medical assistance would involve me in every decision while providing practical support for activities that required physical help or transportation. I think about Margaret sometimes and how she would have reacted to Ashley's manipulation, I said. Margaret had possessed naturally skeptical instincts about people who offered excessive help too quickly or insisted on managing personal affairs without clear invitation or necessity. Margaret would have seen through Ashley's performance immediately, Thomas said with certainty. Perhaps. Or Ashley might have adapted her approach to accommodate Margaret's personality. Professional manipulators are skilled at reading their targets and modifying tactics based on psychological assessment. The essential lesson wasn't about developing universal suspicion of helpful people. It was about maintaining sufficient independence and verification systems to recognize when assistance transitions into control. Dr. Patterson made an interesting observation during my most recent cardiac evaluation. Your cognitive function and overall health status are actually superior now compared to 6 months after your original surgery. Whatever factors were interfering with your recovery have been permanently eliminated. Those interfering factors had been Ashley's systematic pharmaceutical manipulation designed to create progressive medical decline, justifying her eventual murder plot. Sometimes I consider what would have happened if I hadn't switched those glasses that Tuesday evening, I told Thomas. Please don't think about that. I think about it because it reminds me that survival often depends on small but critical decisions made during pivotal moments. Paying attention when something feels wrong, acting on professional instincts even when you can't prove anything definitively yet. Thomas hugged me before departing for Boston. I'm incredibly proud of how you handled the entire situation, Dad. We handled it together. When the evidence became clear, you chose truth over protecting your marriage. That required tremendous courage and integrity. Our family relationship had emerged stronger, built on honesty and mutual respect, rather than assumptions and unverified trust. As Thomas drove away, I took my evening medications, the legitimate prescriptions verified by Dr. Patterson, dispensed by my longtime pharmacist, and confirmed through monthly medical reviews. No mysterious additional pills, no unexplained drowsiness or confusion, no uncertainty about my actual health status or treatment requirements. The house felt peaceful now, free from the constant underlying tension I hadn't fully recognized during Ashley's systematic manipulation campaign. If you're watching this and recognize any of these warning signs in your own family situation, trust your instincts completely. Document everything suspicious. Contact law enforcement immediately if necessary. You possess more strength and resources than you realize, and you deserve much better than becoming someone's victim. Where are you watching this from tonight? Let me know in the comments below and share this story with anyone who might benefit from these lessons about protecting themselves from family manipulation and elder abuse. Remember, experience and wisdom are powerful tools. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise.